竜をすべ第五の次元に君臨する究極竜よ。今こそこの我と一つとなるのだ。統合召喚いでよ覇王竜ザーク。
Hey everyone, Sev here. Today I'm here to go over my Supreme King Zark deck profile and a little forewarning about this deck. This is an Odd Eyes version of the deck, so it mainly has like Odd Eyes cards and Performa Pals. If you want a little bit more of a competitively viable deck, go for a Pendulum Magician build with like Double Iris and Purple Poison and Harmonizing Magician, because that would work a lot better and would give you the more powerful end boards. As the Performa Pal / Odd Eyes version of this deck that I'm playing, that is being showcased to you right now, it can go for very powerful swings ending on like Apollousa, Vortex Dragon, and if so need, you have Zark in your Pendulum Scale, basically preventing your opponent from drawing or adding cards to their hand. So it's pretty, it can be pretty good, but when it is not, running on Cloud 9, it is struggling, so that's just a little forewarning. Also, there's a few extra deck choices that like you could switch around and optimize a little better. When they come up, I'll bring those up, but let's get into the main deck. Starting off, we have 3 copies of Supreme King Gate Magician. This card is kind of the perfect support card for Zark. Everything works. Dumps a Heavenly Dragon from deck or extra deck, adds a Zark spell trap, protects Zark, and also makes it to where you can place a Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your deck in your Pendulum Zone. It's a scale 1, level 7. Only thing about it that's kind of bad is it's a light, so it kind of clashes with this next card. We have 3 copies of Supreme King Dragon Darkworm. This card is also amazing and was played in very generic Pendulum builds back in 2019 and 2020. Basically, if you normal special summon this card, add a Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. If it's in your graveyard and you control no monsters, special summon this card, which of course procs that first effect. Its Pendulum effect is once per turn, if you control no monsters, you can place one Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your deck into your Pendulum Zone. But it locks you from Pendulum summoning monsters that aren't darks, which is why I said if this was a dark, it'd be a little bit better, but Konami wanted it to be a light for thematic reasons, which is kind of dumb. But then we have 1 copy of Astrograph Sorcerer. This card was banned for the longest time, and for good reason. This card is absolutely broken. It can add any card that was destroyed that is in your banished, extra deck, or in your graveyard on top of specially summoning itself. Plus, you could hard make Zark with this, but you don't ever want to do that. Its Pendulum effect is literally useless. You cannot use it because we don't play Stargazer Magician. But if you had 3 of this, maybe you could play Stargazer, but I don't know. Then 1 Supreme King Gate 0. I've seen people play 2 copies of this, and I guess in a Pendulum Magician build that'd be a little bit more optimal, but 1 Gate 0 for an Odd Eyes build is just fine. It's level 7. It's a dark, scale 0. Its effect is decent, but you don't really want to use its effect on top of its Pendulum effect, but usually you end up destroying it, so it's not too crazy. Then 1 copy of Lightworm. I was honestly kind of not really impressed. This card is not all that amazing. Even its Pendulum scale is just kind of mediocre. Like, there's better scales for you to use, but in a Pendulum Magician build, this card is probably a little bit better. Dragon Pendulum, level 4 tuner monster, recurs Supreme King stuff from your extra deck, also immediately synchro or Xyz summons, so it's not the worst, but like it I don't know, I wish we could have gotten better for a light counterpart of Darkworm. And then just to kind of round it off, because I kind of forgot that this was here, 2 Dragon Shrine and 1 Foolish Burial. This is just for Darkworm, just to get it in the graveyard and special it out really quickly. And then 2 copies of Wings of Light. This is a quick play spell card that allows you to dodge Droll and Lockbird, adding Supreme King Dragon or Supreme King Gate Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand, and if you control Zark, you special summon it instead. Then 1 copy of Pendulum Evolution. This card is pretty neat, but usually you don't want to add this. This is kind of like if you have it, you have it. If you don't, or if you don't have the next card, then you add this. But it can add Astrograph Sorcerer, and that does come up on occasion. Soul of the Supreme Celestial King. This card is pretty cool, and at first I thought it only summoned a Zark with its effects negated. However, they're only negated if your Pendulum, Xyz, Synchro, and Fusion Dragon monsters aren't banished. So that was a detail I needed to read at the card in order to find out. This card just basically cheats out Zark. Granted, you do have to set it, but for the Odd Eyes portion, we're playing 3 copies of Revolution Dragon. Ever since this card came out, it's just been in Pendulum builds, because adding a free dragon is pretty neat. 1 Odd Eyes Arc Pendulum Dragon. Like I said, its Pendulum effect is pretty neat. If an Odd Eyes card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, special summon 1 Odd Eyes monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. And that's a hard once per turn. It's also scale 8, level 7, dark. Pretty much anything you could want in a good Odd Eyes card. Crobat Joker, even though this technically doesn't say Odd Eyes, it adds Odd Eyes stuff and was also banned for several years. For good reason why. It and its brother, Monkey Board, enable some crazy ass Performapal plays. We don't really use its Pendulum effect because the Pendulum effect just kind of isn't an effect. It is and it isn't. But when you know summon this card, add a Performapal, Magician, or Odd Eyes monster from your deck to your hand except itself. So, free Rhoda, essentially. And then 3 copies of Odd Eyes Seer. This is a very good card that it's both Pendulum and Monster Effect are both very good utility cards. On top of its level being 7, it can make level 8 synchros rather easily with Odd Eyes Synchron. It can also recur stuff, send Odd Eyes cards to the graveyard, and also procs Absolute Dragon's Destruction effect. The next, the duo from Dimension Force, we have Lady Ainge and Gentrude. Lady Ainge pitches itself in another Performapal to draw 2 cards and can replace it and can place itself from the graveyard to the Pendulum scale. Gentrude, when destroyed, place a Performapal Pendulum monster from the deck in the Pendulum zone, can add itself back and bounce an Odd Eyes card from your Pendulum zone to the hand. And then it kind of has a Pendulum effect, but you really don't ever use it all that much. But it is a nice scale 8, level 4, dark, of course. Then we have one copy of Performapal Odd Eyes Butler. This procs Absolute Dragon's effect by destroying a Performapal or Odd Eyes monster card you control, except itself, and special summons itself. Then Valet can send any one of these, and its level becomes the same level as the one sent. And then usually you'll be sending Butler, so this way Butler's in the graveyard, so you can do some funny chicanery and end up making Beyond the Pendulum. 1 copy of Pendulum Sorcerer. Again, this card is really useful. It's a level 4. Pop a couple cards, add some Performapal stuff, and extend your plays further. 1 copy of Odd Eyes Seer. Doesn't get as much use in this deck as it would in another one, but if you're playing more utilitarian synchros like Baron, like Borreload Savage Dragon, Synchron becomes infinitely more useful, especially because it gels well with things like Odd Eyes Seer and the next card we have coming up, Odd Eyes Dissolver. Odd Eyes Dissolver is basically your makeshift polymerization for the deck. In the scale, it can fuse, and with its monster effect, it can fuse, and it can fuse with your scales as well, making for it to be a pretty useful effect. With it being a level 8, it gels well with Odd Eyes Seer if you play Baronne the Floor, which, if you want a more competitive version of this deck, play Baron and Borreload Savage Dragon. They're just amazing cards. And then that is all for our Odd Eyes portion. To finish up the deck, we have hand traps. We have 3 Ash and 3 Impermanents. Seems relatively self-explanatory. Impermanence can stop Fire King stuff, so can Ash. And these can also be flex spots for other hand traps in the side deck. For the extra deck, we are running a lot of 1-ofs. It's a little bit of a tight space. We got one copy of Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. And then basically this, when it's special summoned, bounce the face-up attack position monster your opponent controls to the hand. And then it's also an Omni Negate that shuffles back your Pendulum monsters, and more importantly, destroys things too when it's negated. It's just important with Zark, because if you want to negate Zark's effect on your first turn and put him in the Pendulum scale, that could be like a complete like zero-out factor for a lot of decks. One Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. This can be a closeout card, but usually you're just banishing this from your extra deck to make Zark. The next, the dragon himself, Supreme King Zark, looking amazing in Secret Rare. His Pendulum effect reads, Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters your opponent controls cannot activate their effects. Once per turn, when your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand, except during the draw phase or the damage step, destroy that card. And then it requires 4 dragons, 1 fusion, 1 synchro, 1 Xyz, and 1 pendulum. Must be fusion, cannot be summoned by other ways. If this card is special summoned, destroy all cards your opponent controls. Cannot be destroyed by card effects. Cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. Your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon 1 Supreme King Dragon monster from your deck or extra deck. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed by battle or card effect, place this card in your pendulum zone. 4,000 beater is just wonderful. Arc Ray, it's purified, not a successful brother. It has some powerful effects, but overall it's not really worth it. However, you can do some pretty nifty setups. If you have like Infinity in your other scale, you can actually summon out your Zark from if it's face up in the extra deck using this card. However, you do have to get Zark out for that, so it's it's a bit iffy sometimes, And for the synchros, we're playing 1 Supreme King Dragon Clear Wing. If you synchro summon this card, destroy all face-up monsters your opponent controls. Then once per turn before damage calculation, if this card battles a monster your opponent battles an opponent's monster, destroy that monster, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's attack. If this card's in your graveyard, tribute 2 Supreme King Dragon monsters and then special summon this card back. Now, this can be any Clear Wing monster. I cannot find another copy of Clearwing Synchro Dragon, and I don't want to take the Secret Rare version out of my Speedroid deck to put in this one. So we're just playing Crystal Clearwing. If you want to go for more practicality, play Clearwing Synchro Dragon. You can actually summon it, unlike this. This, you're literally just banishing or dumping it from your extra deck. So it literally only sees value from that. Then 1 copy of Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. You can do stuff with this, but you're more likely just banishing it or dumping it from your extra deck. Supreme King Dragon Dark Rebellion. Again, if you want to cut this and play this, and that leaves you with more room to wiggle with extra deck space, you can. Dark Rebellion is essentially just one big anti-towers monster it looks like there's a big monster on the field. Overlaying the Dark Rebellion, sink it to 0, and swing over it for probably game. But then we're playing Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, can negate attacks, and also summons an Odd Eyes monster when it's sent to the graveyard. This card shouldn't have been printed. This was a big mistake. Then we're playing 1 copy of Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, which usually you won't ever get this card's effects. Mainly because it's almost impossible to get this card's effects, because you need to Xyz summon it with an Xyz monster, which is very difficult to do. However, Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord, you can easily get its effects because you just slap it right on top of Rebellion Dragon and attack 3 times. Oh, a little bit mishandling there. We have 1 copy of Beyond the Pendulum. I think the second best Link monster to ever happen to Pendulums, next to its brother Heavy Metal Foes Electromite. Can pop cards, adds a pendulum monster for at the cost of 1,200 life points. Generic arrows. Pretty generic materials for a pendulum deck too. And yeah, it's a very good card. Especially pairing it with Gate Infinity too, it allows you to summon anywhere from like 1 to 12, which is crazy. And then its upgraded counterpart, Exceed the Pendulum, which gives you an additional summon and also recurs your pendulum monsters from your extra deck back to your hand, and of course giving you more friendly arrows. Unfortunately, I wish it was a spellcaster with 2,500 attack. It helped for Soul of the Celestial Supreme, or the Supreme Celestial King, but that's neither here nor there. Then next we have Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians. This card is still amazing, and in pendulum decks, it just gets so much utility. Basically, just it's like another buffer zone to like help you go into Apollousa, Bow of the Goddess, which is a monster negate that people have known about. However, Apollousa is not really played anymore because there's just better monster negation cards, I feel. All right, I hope you guys all enjoyed. Again, this deck was not wholly my original idea. I did do a few tweaks in the extra deck. However, like the main deck is practically a 1-for-1 carbon copy of the list that Entertainer did when, what was it, Dune was announced, or like Age of Overlord stuff was kind of being dribbled out. So I will leave a link to his channel and his video. Basically, like, you know, I mean, he doesn't need promotion, he's bigger than me, but like if you want to know where the original idea of this deck came from, that's where it came from. But if you're looking for a more competitive version, playing it with Pendulum Magicians is a little bit better. Plus you get access to things like Chronograph Sorcerer and Time Gazer Magician, free pendulum free material on top of like what was it, Time Pendulum Graph and Star Pendulum Graph, those spell and trap cards. So again, if you want to play a more competitive version, the Pendulum Magicians will do you no harm. And on top of Zark just being an absolute fucking unit. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this deck profile. I love Arc 5 decks for some reason. So I hope you guys all enjoyed this one, and I'll see you guys in another video. See you guys later.